All right, y'all. Let's get into it. It's time for my favorite bit. It's time for Marvel in the 80s. And today we're talking about X-Men 205. This is from 1986, I believe. Marvel's 25th anniversary. Uncanny X-Men 205 is what it's commonly referred to. This is a one-shot story written by Chris Claremont and Barry Windsor-Smith, with artwork by Barry Windsor-Smith, lettering by Tom Orzechowski. Now, all of the artwork is by Barry Windsor-Smith. Every single bit of it. The penciling, the inking, and the coloring. Now, what I'm showing you is going to be what it will look like if you get this on a screen or if you buy it in a modern-day reprint. I will be showing you the actual edition afterwards because the coloring doesn't quite come through as nuanced as it should, I think, in this, but it does still work. This story is about Lady Deathstrike versus Wolverine with Katie Power from Power Pack caught in the middle, which is interesting. This is totally a blame cartoonist kayfabe thing. I saw them do a video on this back in April, and I snatched it up as soon as I could. It came in the shop a few weeks later. I grabbed it. Starts off with Lady Deathstrike getting upgrades from Lady Spiral. Barry Windsor-Smith did all of this artwork. Don't worry, we'll show the original. It still does kind of work, but it does feel a bit... Here's the thing. We talk about this a lot. 80s coloring and 70s coloring in particular, and 60s. Like, coloring 80s and back was meant to be produced on newsprint. And it's different with the way they do it now. But the coloring in this book is amazing. The detail in the line work is amazing. And the designs are amazing. Now, this is something already right now we're looking at it. It's very reminiscent of Barry Windsor-Smith's Weapon X. And this is like 4 to 5 years before that. So we get this opening of Lady Deathstrike being upgraded with her own claws and shit. She has willingly chosen to do this with the, I think that's the Reavers that are with her. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe they're not. They call them something else. I can't remember what they call them. Maybe they're the Reavers. Anyway. So then we cut to this town. A brilliant coloring job on this cityscape. Great work there by Barry Windsor-Smith. And Katie Power is there. My bad. Maybe she grows up to be Katy Perry, but Katie Power is there from the Power Pack. And she's just doing some Christmas shopping. She's about to go caroling or some shit. This is a Christmas story, actually. So maybe we'll release this separately during Christmas time. But in the midst of going out there trying to be a caroler and spread holiday joy, she gets in the middle of this firefight, and all of a sudden she's confronted with Wolverine. Now, the story is called Wounded Wolf. It is written by both Claremont and Barry Windsor-Smith. So I love the credit given to Barry Windsor-Smith. And look at the line work. Look at all the snow. This is incredibly complex. And if you look at the cartoonist kayfabe video, they talk about how this would be a nightmare for any other colorist. And why would you ever do this to someone else? But Barry colored this himself. So she comes across Wolverine. He's not speaking. He's kind of like in this state of shock. He's been attacked by Lady Deathstrike and her posse, and he's kind of in this like post-berserker mode, and she grabs him and takes him into a cab, and they go away, but then all this attacks, they just keep happening, and Wolverine's trying to get away from it, but he's stuck with Katie Power, and eventually she brings him to this like sense of regaining his normal level of consciousness, right? And the artwork is amazing. The use of the color as part of the drawing. That's something Jim Rugg said. Now, I don't want to just keep riffing off of cartoonist kayfabe, but they know what they're talking about when they talk about these issues, and it was their discussion on this issue that made me really want to pick it up. And I had recently gotten back into Weapon X and reread that in my Wolverine omnibus, and I would love to get the originals now, but I did luckily get the Weapon X Gallery edition, which does reprint this with the colors produced on a better paper, so they come through a little bit better. But she takes Wolverine, they put him in a cab, And then Wolverine's instincts take over, throws Katie and the cab driver out. Right before they get attacked, the cab gets blown up, and Katie is in over her head. She's cursing the fact that she ever came across Logan. She doesn't know what's going on. This is supposed to be a hero, supposed to be your friend, but look at the bottom there. We got those red eyes. He's like Berserker. He's ready to go. But she stops him. He lets out a roar, a scream. He's just in his tidy brownies right there. And the belt buckle looks a little weird, but we get the gig. But he comes to his senses. He starts realizing who he is. He's like, we got bad people after us. I'm going to take care of them. You close your eyes. He goes out there. He just starts slashing through these motherfuckers. Fan-fucking-tastic. And then an amazing fight sequence with Lady Deathstrike and Wolverine. And look how the coloring in the background, there's not a lot of background work, but there's a lot of foreground work with the line detail is not lacking at all in this book. But the backgrounds they're filled with nuance of these shades of colors changing. That really comes across better, I think, on newsprint. But look here at the way the color works there. Frickin' fantastic. But a great fight between Lady Deathstrike and Wolverine. He eventually overcomes her, guts her, takes her out, and he's like, look at you. Look at what you've become. Somebody did this to me. You asked for someone to do this to you. And that great final panel right there on this page. Oh, my goodness. But he's just looking at her, and he's like, you almost disgust me, right? Because, you chose this. And she's just looking so gnarly, and he doesn't kill her, even though she begs for it. He sheathes his claws, goes back to Katie, makes sure that she's safe, and they form a bond. And that's X-Men 205. So let's run through this artwork real quick again here. Color's going to be a bit more bold and garish here without the nuance or the gradients that it's supposed to have that we'll see on the newsprint that I will show you here in just a second. Let's run through this. If you look at the lack of backgrounds, but look at all the detail in the foreground, there is not a lack of weight on any of these pages. If anything, excessive use of backgrounds would actually hinder this book with as much detail is put into the front of it. Fable says, great prelude art-wise to the brilliance of Weapon X. Exactly. I even think Kayfabe mentioned that it was kind of like a prototypical Barry Windsor-Smith Weapon X delivery. But a decent enough story. Stories, Katie Power, that whole bit could be taken out, but just the use of the innocent, I guess, is there. And I get that. So there's my issue that I picked up, I guess, a couple months ago. X-Men 205. The coloring comes through. If you notice, it's not as garish. It's got a little bit more subtlety to it. It doesn't appear as bold or garish. And the coloring on this and the printing on it is fucking phenomenal. This is one of those books. Even if you just want to collect just a handful of X-Men books, this is one I think you need to pick up. Now, I do want to get the Life Death 2 issues that he did with Storm and Forge. I haven't picked those up. I haven't read those in forever. But y'all, this is top-notch stuff. Highly detailed. A master of the game at this point. He's been drawing Marvel Comics since the fucking 60s. Great use of snow. This is something we're going to see in, say, you're picking up Sin City vibes here. Excessive use of snow, but like I said, it feels detailed and complex and dense with the line work, even with the lack of backgrounds, but those backgrounds are done with the color. He always has like cools in the background and warm colors in the foreground. It makes it pop even more. The coloring on this is fucking fantastic. This might be, in my opinion, one of the best colored Marvel comics of this era. I know that Ed and Jim like to talk about that John Romita Jr. Iron Man issue, which I have as well, and it's great. But y'all, the coloring on this, holy shit. There's so many colors and so many different variations of this 4-color method. And it works. Look at that. That's the best panel in the whole fucking issue. Look at the emotion, the rage that you see on Logan's face right there. It's nice to have this in a reprint, even with that Weapon X Gallery edition. That's nice. But nothing is like this motherfucker on newsprint. That's how I read it. This is not collected in the Wolverine Omnibus, but I wanted to add it in because it's a fantastic fucking issue. All in all, I would give that, I'll give it a 5. The story is not all there. The Katie Power thing's a little bit off, but whatever. That's just of its time. They were trying to boost up Power Pack. I'm going to give it a 5 because I think this is one of my favorite Barry Windsor-Smith works I've ever fucking read. So that was X-Men 205. Go check it out. Get it on newsprint. Read it. And this has been Marvel in the 80s.